I don't know.
Okay, I think it's about that time, so we'll get rolling here. Okay, this is where I think the course gets fun. They get more down to the specifics, and probably what a lot of people wanted to do from day one. But there's a lot of things to set up first. So we'll be working on this probably this week and next as well as we work through the specific type of places to put money. Let me pray, and we'll get going. Father, we pray for our time together. We want this to be helpful and profitable, and finances are things we have to deal with, whether we want to or not. And we want to be the best stewards we possibly can. We know you own it all, and you own the cattle on 1,000 hills, as you tell us in the Psalms. But you've given us stewardship over that which you own, and we want to be good stewards. So we pray we can be in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, as we move into this section, part of this is the education, teaching you things that some of you know, a lot of you don't, and so even if you, when you get done with all this, you don't know what, you're still struggling with something, at least you should have some insights. So I'm gonna flip through very quickly our review from a couple of weeks ago, since we've been out of commission for a little bit. So as you're beginning to set up an investment program, you need to first of all eliminate all credit card debt and consumer debt. That'd be things like cars, or if you bought something at a furniture store on time, those types of things. Set up an emergency fund. Now, by the way, when I said that on the consumer debt, that doesn't mean you have to not be paying on a car to set up an investment program. But if you have high interest rate on a car, so you bought a used car, you financed it at the bank, and you got 12% interest on that, you need to get that down real quickly, because that'll eat you up. But then set up your emergency fund, so you should have at least 3 months of living expenses somewhere liquid, someplace you can get to in a hurry if you had to. So again, going on, let's say if you live on $5,000 a month, you should have at least $15,000 a month in a liquid account, a money market, checking account, something. We'll talk about that a little bit, where you can get to it if you had to. Then you set up separate accounts for major purchases. So you have $15,000 in your emergency fund in case your car engine blows up, that type of thing, and you got to repair it for $5,000. So you have that kind of thing. But there's some other major purchases that might be coming along. So I was just talking to someone recently. If they have a roof that is 25 years old, then most likely they're going to have to be replacing that roof in the next few years.
Just move to Chatham, you get a free one.
Yes, that in Chatham. Well, every so often in Chatham we do a dance, kind of like a rain dance, but it's a hail dance, and we pray that all the stuff. But insurance companies don't like that much, so they're dinging us on the other end a little bit. But at any rate, but if you think you might have to put out $15,000 for a new roof, or 12, that's going to really hurt your emergency fund. So if you got a brand new roof, if you live in Chatham, and you may not have any worry about that for 20 years, fine. But if you know it's coming up in the next couple of years, you better start saving for that big purchase that you're going to have to do. If your car is 15 years old, got 200,000 miles on it, you might really be thinking about getting another car soon, and you may need to have a fund for that. As a matter of fact, having a car fund is a real good idea. To just always have a car fund building up, put $100 a month in there, $200, whatever you can do, and just let that go for years. Then when you're ready to buy a car, you got the money and ready to go. And then the fourth thing, invest for long-range goals as well. So you look down the road, and the big ones, if you have children at home, you got a college education coming up. If you're older, you got retirement coming up. So you might have some just various things, or you want to buy a bigger house or whatever. So you got these long-range goals down the road, 5 years or 10 years or further down. So invest for that. So those are the first things. We talked about risk. There's a lot of different kinds of risk, and basically a question is your risk tolerance. How much can you stand the risk? That will depend on a lot of factors. A lot of it just your personality, as well as your situation in life. But the is the stock market riskier than an investment interest savings account? Not in the long haul. In the long haul, stock market has been returning 13% for decades, overall average. The interest-bearing account might be returning 1.5. So which is riskier? You can't possibly lose your money unless the world comes to an end in your savings account, but and the stock market go up and down all the time. But over the long haul, actually there's less risk in the stock market if you're picking the right kind of investments, which is what we'll talk about. And then diversification. Make sure as you try to plan the future, you're not going to hit the jackpot every time. So diversify, put money in different things. Liquid accounts are those things that are easily accessible. You can write a check for them. You take it out of the bank easily. You can transfer it quickly. That's liquid money. Growth money, you got that in the stock market and places like that we'll talk about. Non-liquid would be things like your house. Things that are like that. Your house might be worth $100,000, $200,000 or whatever, and on paper you've got that money, but in reality, if you had to have money, you'd have to sell the house to get that money. So that's not very liquid. It's not easy to get to easily. Other real estate as well. So if you had rental houses or something like that, these are things you could diversify in if you wanted to, and have. And we'll talk about some other instruments in a minute. Many people fail at whatever they try to invest in because they don't use good sense in investing. Many investors never make money over a 10-year period in anything. This particular investing guru says the reason why people fail is they don't have good financial goals. They do not understand the laws of compound growth that we talked about quite a bit in the past. Such a wonderful tool for growing wealth. And then investors follow complex investment strategies. Here's the rule of thumb. If you don't understand it, don't invest in it. Okay? So that's where a lot of people get messed up. Somebody sells them a product that they don't understand, but they said, well, they seem to know what they're talking about, but you don't understand it, so don't invest in it. So for example, if you understand Bitcoin, if you think you understand Bitcoin, you're wrong. And number two, if you invest in it and you don't understand it because somebody at the barbershop talked you into it, you're probably going to lose a lot of money. So be careful. If you don't understand it, if you're going to invest in something, become a student of that product so that you know what you're actually investing in. Investors are greedy. They seem to make a little money. They take it out. They don't have patience. Investors are influenced by and act upon what they read in the financial press, and so they make knee-jerk reactions and choices. Investors rely on guru, brokers, and investment advice instead of doing their own work, and so forth. And then investors chase investments acting emotionally rather than rationally. So emotional choices are usually wrong choices. If you're really sharp and you can observe emotional swings in economy and people, you'll probably do pretty well because you can invest when people are emotionally out of sorts, and invest when they are that way. For example, again, Warren Buffett says that you should be, when people are selling, you should be a buyer. When people are buying, you should be a seller. So work against the strategy and emotional stuff. We looked at the principles of investing from Scripture. We did that last time, I believe, so we won't go back over those, but Scripture talks considerably about that. Okay, so this is where we are today, and Luke, maybe I could get you to help us pass these out. Maybe
Sure.
You can, and Connor, maybe you could pass out on each side. So these are just the financial plan pyramid, which is right here. This will be a good resource to just look at and to keep somewhere, perhaps. You should have probably a place where you have all your financial papers and stuff. I'm going to give everybody a booklet eventually in here, just a little booklet where you write down all your financial information, including information concerning if you pass away, your details on what your family wants you to do about that. And these little booklets you can keep in a very safe place so that people know what you've got. So, but this here, you might want to keep that with their financial papers, so, and whatever you have, so that you can look at it once in a while. These are the kind of things we want to look at tonight, as far as what kind of investments are, what are the financial investments, what's the financial instruments and tools that are out there, when I talk to people about these kinds of things, somebody comes to my office and they're asking about whatever, normally, and this is not everybody, of course, but normally, most people would not be able to tell me what hardly any of those things are. Okay? So they know insurance, but they don't know different kinds of insurance very well. They don't know how it works and why you should get it or shouldn't get it. They know a little bit about the savings stuff, but you start talking about what's the difference between a mutual fund, a money market, and a balanced mutual fund. What's the difference between a money market and a savings bonds or a CD? Most people don't know what those things are. And I think if we're ignorant of those things, we're easy prey for people to take advantage of us. And we simply don't know what we've got. And it's kind of amazing to work with somebody and look at their stuff and they don't know what they got. And if they're surprised on the good side, they're very happy. So I remember once talking with a guy who's looking at retirement, looking at what he had through his work, some kind of pension, and that kind of thing. He had no idea what he had available to retire on. And by God's grace and the fact that these people, his business had put money away for him, he was comfortable. But he didn't know that, and he thought he couldn't possibly retire, but he could. But it's good to know ahead of time, right? So that's the goal of what we're going to look at here. So we've already looked at insurance some. I think Jim handled that with us, and I gave you a little bit more. So we're not going to look at that tonight. The next tier up is and as you go up, these things are more risky as far as possibility of short-term losing your money, and they're also the potential of making more money as you go up. I think there is a dividing line here as we get up here, but just look quickly over there, see how many of those things you could identify. Do you know what, in the second line, do you know what a treasury issue is? A T-bill, a T-bond, do you know what those are? Do you know the difference in the next line up between a municipal bond and a corporate bond? Do you know the difference between those two and why one would invest in one or the other? You go up a little further, you've got mutual funds. What do you know the difference between a balanced mutual fund and a high-grade preferred stock, for example? Going up, blue chip common stock. What does that mean? What do you mean blue chip? You know, how about real estate growth mutual funds? Next line, this is where we might say the law of diminishing returns could kick in. As you go up, there's more potential to make money on these things, but they're also more speculative, and the potential of losing money is also much higher. So, for example, we've talked before about collectibles. Collectibles are, if you hit the jackpot just right, you can make a lot of money on collectibles. But most people never do. And most people, if they are trying to make money on collectibles, don't hit the sweet spot. So a few of you remember, I think I probably mentioned this class, I don't know, but you remember the Beanie Baby craze. And so that went up just huge at one time. And had people sold at the right moment, they could make a lot of money. But if they didn't make anything at all. Some people will collect guns or cars or whatever, baseball cards. That was big back in my youth. Comic books, any number of things that you can collect. Most people never make money on those. How many of you ever watched the Antique Roadshow? Okay, fun to watch, probably totally ridiculous. So they show somebody that brought in this little Twinkie thing. Did you know that's worth $150,000? I'd like to see them sell those for those prices. And they ought to go now to the auction houses and see what really happened there. Maybe they're sold for that, but I'm very skeptical. But collectibles are hard to make money on unless you are an expert at it. Art, for example, you want to be an art collector, you're going to really have to do a lot of work to get up there on that one. And then you go up to commodities, and penny stocks, we'll look at that in a little bit. Commodities, gold and silver, that kind of thing. Penny stocks are kind of like it says. You got a stock that's selling for a nickel. Okay, so wow, how can you go wrong buying a stock for a nickel? So you buy 100,000 shares at a nickel, and you got that money, hoping it goes up to 10 cents and you double your money. Well, if it does, great. Most of the time it doesn't. And most of the time, whatever you put into penny stocks, you're going to lose. So we'll talk a little bit more about those things. But this is something, look at this over. If you don't know how to define these things, then you should educate yourself more on that. And we will look at some of this tonight. So the type of investments that we will use will be determined by our specific goals, our risk tolerance, our values, and our knowledge. So we've looked at everything but the last one, which is knowledge. And we want to try to work on that tonight. To get in this lesson, we hope to give you enough knowledge to get started in a good investment program. And in order to do that, we'll detail various long-term investments. And then we'll probably follow that up next week by trying to show you how to actually make this work. And how we got later on, we're going to be doing retirements and stuff like that. But we'll talk a little bit about where to put your money in those kind of investments as well. Okay? So let's start out here now by looking at interest-bearing investments. So these are the things that you can put somewhere and you are going to receive interest for doing that. Okay? So these are some of them. Most people know about savings accounts because you have a bank. A lot of people have a savings account of some kind in a bank. They're insured by the federal government. I think it's up to $250,000 now, isn't it? Does anybody know for sure? I think it's $250,000. So that means that unless you have over $250,000 in these investments, you're not. And it goes bust. Bank goes bust or whatever. You're going to get your money back from the government. So and so far, when people have actually lost money that had more than that in these kinds of institutions, who have lost $500,000 or $1 million, they get reimbursed somehow anyway. The government usually steps in because they don't want people to spook out and be afraid of investing. Yeah. Yep.
And it's $250,000 per account.
Per account.
So you can split those up into different accounts and increase your coverage.
That's right.
That's not true. So it's $250,000 per bank, but so if you're a couple, it's 500,000.
Yeah.
But certain things don't qualify, like IRAs are separate.
Right.
So there's certain categories that are different, but in general, it's 250,000.
Yeah. So what we do on that? So if you have the money in the bank for the insured, that would be true. But then you have CDs. You have a $250,000 CD. That's insured separately, and you might have two of those or three of those. And those are separate investments. So that in that sense, you can have more than one. I'm not sure. I'm sure most of you aren't really worried about that level of how many CDs, $250,000 CDs you got sitting around. But if you do, that's great. Great. You should be up here instead of me. So saving bonds. I'll talk about a few of those in a moment. There are various kinds of savings bonds. Back when I was growing up, my parents invested in a double E saving bonds. Let's see, I don't think I had those on here. Yeah, they invested in double E saving bonds, which were $25 increments. So I think we bought one. My parents bought one every paycheck, and they put these in a drawer. So they had, and they're kind of cute little bonds if you ever seen them. Kind of neat, and they were pretty good gifts for wedding presents and graduation presents. You give somebody a bond. And it's pretty cool. I still remember to this day, my parents had several of those bonds, maybe several $1,000s. And my dad had a heart attack and was out of work off and on for the rest of his life. He was 43 when he had a heart attack. So for quite a few months, and it didn't have the safety nets we had today, so we were running low on money. And I remember Mom going to her secret stash drawer and pulling out those savings bonds and counting them out to sell them so we get some money. So that was the end of the savings bonds for us, but it came in handy. They had done that. They don't pay very much these days. I didn't bother to look at the rate. Does anybody know what a double E is paying right now? It's very, very low. It's hardly worth talking about. There's I-bonds too. I-bonds got real popular a few years ago. They went up to about 9% interest for a bit. I-bonds are different. The series, the double E are bonds that you buy it at a particular interest rate, like 2% or 1%, and it'll continue that rate until they mature at a certain date, usually 30 years. An I-bond, on the other hand, is adjust every year according to the inflation rate. So when inflation goes up, the I-bonds go up with them. If inflation is low, they're pretty low. So a few years ago, the I-bonds were 9.2%. And that's pretty hard to beat for a totally safe investment. But the interest rates and inflation's come down now, and it's down, they're paying 2.3% or something right now. So and there's some variables there, but that's another government bond. Anymore, I don't think you can get the paper bonds you used to be able to get. You can do it electronically with Treasury Direct, and it's a safe investment. Right now, not paying enough to be worth your while, in my opinion, to start doing that. But if inflation kicks back up, and with President Trump's new ideas on these tariffs, who knows? It's going to be interesting to see. If it kicks back up, then the I-bonds will go up with it. So it's kind of an inflation hedge. And if you want to put money there, that's a possibility. So you got these kind of bonds that are available. Then you have the CDs, which I probably go back to here. You got your CDs. Most people are familiar with CDs. Certificates of deposit you can get at the bank real simply. You can get them through mutual funds too, and brokers. They have, I think it's increments of, you can buy those for 6 months, a year, 2 years, up to 5 years. And the interest rates are varied depending on the length of the bond, of the CD. And also, it varies depending on the institution. So if you're sitting in the lobby of your bank sometime, I know most of you don't actually go into the bank anymore, but I do once in a while. I just want them to see my smiley face, and they have suckers. So I usually take Maya or somebody in with me, and we get a couple, 3 suckers, and anyway. So biscuits?
Our bank has doggy biscuits.
Oh, doggy biscuits. Well, you haven't tried them.
They do have doggy.
Does Dan know about these biscuits? These are a little crunchy here. Okay, so if you go into your bank, I think you'll see. I think I was in my bank the other day. They had CDs for a year or whatever for like 2%. Okay, but you can go on the online banks, and you can get 5% on a CD. So and they're just as safe. They're guaranteed by the same government, and you can do it because I know there's several ladies in our church over 80 years old that are buying these online CDs. It's not that complicated when you're 85 years old and you're doing these things. So it can be done. It's not that hard. And don't buy a 2% CD when you get 5%. Okay? That doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? So CDs are a very safe investment. The drawback on CDs is you're locked in for whatever period of time you have bought the CDs for. 6 months, 2 years, 5 years. You're not supposed to cash in those CDs until they mature. However, you can do so if you want to, but you lose, I think, 6 months of interest, if I'm correct on that. So you lose that money, but it's a penalty for taking it out early. But it's a good place to be for put your money that you want to save for a while, and you can't get to it real easily, so you don't accidentally go out and spend it. So CDs and seniors in particular love CDs because they're simple, they're safe, they give a fairly good return on your money, and they're pretty handy for a lot of people. And then there are money markets. So what is a money market? Well, a money market's a lot like a savings account, but usually the money markets are with mutual funds or with a broker. So a money market will pay higher rate of interest usually, and it's also liquid. So it's a wonderful place to put your emergency money, your emergency savings, or to plan for a long-term investment, or like buy a car. It's a good place to put your money. So you can, almost any of the brokers, we'll talk about those in a moment, have these, the mutual funds. They'll have a money market, and right now they're turning in around 5% on your investment. That's pretty good, you know. So make sure that you're getting that amount with something. So that's a good place for your emergency money. Might as well not have it in your sock drawer. Put it in something where you can make a little money on it. Money markets are really pretty good place for these things. You should, like I said, and you can get a checkbook with your money markets and write a check on them if you want to, or you can transfer the money from your money market to your bank if you want to. So it's a pretty handy instrument to have available to you. But it beats putting it in the bank at the insured savings accounts. So the college savings bond, these are programs with the government, 529 funds. You can put these, if you're saving money for your kids' college, it works kind of like a CD type of thing as a savings bond. They are, one of the advantages of those is they're both federal and state tax free. So that's an advantage when you take that money out. So you have your kid going to college, you start saving when they're 5 years old, and by the time they're ready for college, you got a pretty good hunk of change there to help them with their tuition and whatever, right?
And not only you spend it tax-free, but you also get a tax deduction in Illinois for contributing.
Oh, for contributing, you know what, do you?
What's that?
I was not aware of that. Different states have different laws on these kinds of things, but that's a pretty good one. So if that's where you want to put your money, that's a fairly good option. You have to weigh this out if you're a parent. You're thinking about these things. You got to weigh this out a little bit. That when kid goes to college, and school is looking at the grants and whatever they're going to give your child to go to college, they're going to look at how much money you have available in your family to go to college. And the less you have, the better for grants. Okay, so if you have a bunch of money stored up in a 529, so you got $50,000 by God's grace in a 529, and the college looks at that, that's going to help pay that bill down, but most likely you're not going to get the grants that you could have gotten from the government because you've got more money than the average person. If you go in there broke, they'll be more favorable. That's really upside down investing, isn't it? So be as broke as you can so that you can get more from the government. I don't like that idea, but that's our government to a large degree. The worse you do financially, the more they're going to help you. So the poorer you are, the more they're going to help you. So we play every card we can when we get to that place, right? Because it's not cheap to go to school. Okay. And then the last one on our list is annuities. Annuities are highly complicated investment vehicles that are usually sold by insurance companies that are very, very complicated, very hard to understand. You have to really be quite the student to know exactly how they work. So I would encourage you to be very, very careful. There's different kinds of annuities. There's one annuity that everybody in this room is in, and it's the best annuity option you've got, and that's called Social Security. So you're already in the biggest and best annuity possible, and I think that's enough diversity into annuities myself. So in other words, an annuity is you pay in an amount of money, monthly or whatever, for long periods of time. When you get at retirement age, they start sending you cash, start sending you monthly checks and whatnot, or yearly checks, and that makes an annuity. That's what an annuity is. Social Security does that. That's exactly what it is. So if you're going to look at an annuity, make sure you understand what you're into. The spreadsheets that sometimes the insurance agent shows you are pretty questionable sometimes, so be careful.
I hear some people say Social Security is a scam.
Well, they're liars, big fat liars. People have been getting that money for about almost 100 years now, so not much of a scam. 1,000 years, yeah. I don't know what they mean by scam. We're paying in, and we're at retirement. We get out. It's not an entitlement. That's what a lot of people say. It's not an entitlement. It's a program you pay into, and you get money back out The concern with the people like that, who might say something like that, is that they're concerned it's not gonna hold up in time, and somehow we're gonna run out of money. That is very unlikely, because our system is ran on that kind of a program. And if you start reducing or removing money to retired people, you're gonna have a lot of politicians that are working at Taco Bell. So I really don't think that's gonna happen. I remember about 20, 30 years ago, we had a couple in this church, totally believed exactly what you said. Social Security's not gonna be there when I need it, and it's totally gonna ignore it. And Social Security's doing great at this point. Now, there's nothing absolutely guaranteed in life, but Social Security is pretty secure, even though, well, the government's not spending money wisely a lot of times.
I go to a retirement seminar for the state every year that they put on, just to keep you updated on, how things are going, retirement things. And they have a guy from Social Security come over and talk to us. And he's addressing what you say there. So if the worst possible thing that could happen is it could go down to about 75%, because they will always pay out what they bring in. Now, they may, current rate, they may not be building it up the way it is, and you wouldn't get your 100%, but that's not even likely because of what you said.
Yeah.
But at the worst possible thing, whatever comes in that year, they will pay out.
Yeah.
And that'll be about 75%.
Yeah. So there's a possibility of reduction, but that's gonna be a hard sell, because people plan on it. Same thing with the state pension, for example. The state can't pay their pensions. They don't have the money, but somehow they do, and so every year they pay out of money they don't have. It's an interesting world we live in, and it may not always last, but right now I think that's. And remember, here's a key to financial planning for Christians. We do the best we can with the information we've got, and if the Lord decides that we don't need money, and that everything's going to go bust, then that's the Lord's business, right? And He will still be faithful. We don't trust in wealth, we trust in Him. So that's something to always keep in mind. But we should be good stewards of the best that we can. Okay, let's move on to talk about bonds a little bit. There's different kinds of bonds. There's some treasury securities, treasury notes, treasury bills, treasury bonds, and then there's corporate bonds, municipal bonds, other kind of bonds. But just quickly, a bond is, in essence, loaning money to somebody, and they give you an interest in return. So basically, if I loaned $1,000 to Luke here, and Luke started paying me back $10 a month, or something like that, that's kind of a bond. Okay, I've loaned him some money, he pays it back. These bonds are the treasury securities. That's investing in. It's loaning the government money for various reasons, and they have treasury. They have things that go from 6 months all the way up to 30 years that you can invest in, and that's absolutely, as far as the world's concerned, safe as can be, as anything in this world can be. So you can buy a treasury bill, or a mutual fund that invests in those things, and get return from the government in that way. Normally, the treasury securities are going to be a little bit less of a return than the corporate bonds, and that's because corporate bonds, you're going to loan money to AT&T, to Apple, to whoever has these bonds. You're giving them, let's say, $1,000, and they are returning interest on your loan, your investment in them, and so they're going to pay a little bit more than the government, because they're not insured. They're not 100% guaranteed. So the higher the risk, the more they're going to pay. But if you're investing in a very good company like an Apple or something like that, you're not too likely to ever lose your money. Municipal bonds is not something most of you need to worry about. Municipal bonds are investing in local government, state of Illinois, the Springfield here, and you get less return on those bonds, but they're usually tax-free, and that's I'm just making sure they're similar to court, but they're issued by local governments. The interest is tax-free, but their yield varies according to the municipality. So once again, if you're investing in a very stable government bond, your rate of return is lower. If you're investing in a company, a city, for example, that could go bankrupt, like Chicago, they'll pay you more to invest with them because they're not doing so well. But you're taking a bigger risk when you invest in places that don't look like it's doing so well. So you can do that, but you have to think. A lot of people think bonds are much safer than stocks. I think they're a good diversification, but they're not necessarily, except for treasuries, they're not necessarily safer than the stock market. But they are a place to invest money. A lot of people like to put money in bonds as because basically it's just a way to get more interest money. Bob?
On like the corporate bonds, if you would buy one, is it a set rate that you're guaranteed to pay
Yeah.
back?
Yeah, so say you buy a bond with Apple at 5%.
Okay.
Okay, and the bond has a maturity date, so it goes to 10 years.
Oh,
Let's say.
is that what it is?
Yeah, well, you have different maturities, but I made that up. So if you have a 10-year maturity rate, your money is guaranteed to return to you at 5% investment. You'll get your 5% back at the end of 10 years. 5% a year. Okay? Yeah, you're getting but at the end of 10 years, your bond matures and you cash it in and you get all your money plus your interest. Some bonds pay you monthly, but that's what happened. Now, bonds will go, here's the tricky part about bonds. Bonds go up in value. So let's say this bond you bought at Apple was for $100. Okay? If the interest rates go up during that time, the bond itself goes down in value. So you can sell your bond early, but you'll lose money at that. At the same time, the interest rates are up. So the opposite is true. If interest rates go down, the value of the bond goes up, and therefore your bond value, and you can sell the bond early and make money that way. So there's capital gains that could be made on bonds. Kind of a tricky thing that a lot of people don't want to bother with bond. The best way I'm giving you information on these things so you know it. The best way for 95% of all investors is mutual funds that invest in these kinds of things for you, so that you don't have to know everything and stuff. But the mutual funds will help. Okay, now let's move on then I'm going to leave that there. Let's move on to stocks. There's lots of different kinds of stocks. Let me just hit some of those. These are things that somebody will bring up to you or you think about. There's income stocks. Income stocks are stocks that are usually pretty stable. They don't bounce up and down a lot, but they usually have a bigger dividend. So dividend stocks. These are utilities are a good example. Utilities need a lot of cash to run, but they don't bounce up and down a lot because they're secure entities. But they pay a very hefty dividend, a good dividend. So you can get a dividend of 3 or 4 or 5% sometimes from a utility stock, and you take the possibility that the stock value might go up as well. So you can make money on the value of the stock going up as well as the dividend. But if the stock does not go up, even if it goes down, you're going to be getting your dividends. And some people live on dividends. They, especially older people, they get dividends and they live on these dividends. And I was looking for a number, I lost it. It seems like close to 2/3 of all the investment return on stocks actually come from dividends. So dividends are not a throwaway. They're very helpful for a lot of people, and they're good things to be. So utilities, telecom, for example, AT&T, Verizon, they pay very hefty dividends, 6% or 7% sometimes, to put money with them. And if you can put it in there and just let it go, then you're getting that dividend on a regular basis. And that beats a CD, beats a bond, beats most everything on dividends, on that kind of income. Growth stocks, on the other hand, are those companies that are, they don't give dividends usually, but they're really growing fast. They're the ones that can make a lot of money in a hurry for you, and at least you hope they can, if you get the right one. So, for example, Facebook or Amazon, or what Apple now pays a little dividend, but these are stocks that are just growing by leaps and bounds, and you make money on their growth. So, Apple has gone up like tenfold in the last 10 years. So that means, that doesn't mean double, that means 900%, 1,000%. It's a growth fund. Now, so if you get in a fund like a company like that, that's great, but they don't all do that well, right? So that makes growth stocks a little bit more risky, and you got to know which one's the best at the particular time. That's not always easy to figure out, obviously. And then there are blue chips. Blue chips are the biggest companies in the world usually. So the Dow Jones, there's 30 stocks in the Dow Jones average. These are the biggest, some of the biggest stocks in the world, biggest companies in the world, and they're considered, the stalwarts of the investment world. Those periodically change. Some company falls out of favor, another company sticks stuck in there, but that's the blue chips, the very top of the line stocks and companies in the world. Those are blue chips. All right. So when you're looking at, while I'm on this, if you're looking at, if you listen to the investment news, they'll talk about the stock market going up and down today. So the Dow Jones went up today 30 points. That's just these 30 stocks that we're talking about that are big stocks, blue chip stocks. They went up 30 points. The S&P 500 is also a major index, and that is the 500 biggest companies in America. And they go up and down all the time. And so you might hear the announcer say, the Dow Jones went up 30 points, and S&P 500 fell 10 points. So these 500 stocks together went down a little bit. Then you hear about NASDAQ. NASDAQ is the stocks that are not in the Dow Jones area, but they're stocks that are usually smaller stocks or technology stocks. They're in a different index totally. And so the announcer says, well, they went up 300 points today. Well, that usually because we got a lot of technology there, a lot of things that might go up. It's mostly growth stocks. And so you hear those different types of things, three major indexes that go up and down. It just gives you a knowledge a little bit about what they're talking about. Doesn't really matter a whole lot to you, except that you have some knowledge. And knowledge is powerful. Knowledge is helpful. So those are the stocks. You can buy stocks through brokers. You can go, or you can buy them through yourself, through different online brokers we'll talk about later. So that's how you get your stocks. So they're pretty easy today. Back years ago, you had to go with a broker who charged a lot of money to buy stocks. All that's changed with the online stuff now, and you can still go to a broker, but they don't make the commissions they used to, and or you can do it yourself. But it's not hard to buy stocks today. There's advantages to that in the sense that it's easy. Disadvantages, a lot of people do it, they don't know what they're doing, and they can lose money in the process. But that's why we're going to recommend here to you in just a moment mutual funds. There's lots of things to know about stocks. I'm going to probably skip that because I don't think most of you are in that category. Let's stop here for a minute before we hit mutual funds and take any questions or comments or adjustments to what I've just said that might be helpful to you. If you don't know what I'm talking about on something else, something I've talked about, you would probably not be alone in this room. So please feel free to speak up. You're all got this down like a champ. The test is coming next week. All right, yeah, Mike?
Just clarifying my comment earlier
Yeah.
about getting the deduction on your 529. There's only, and Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, only if you buy the 529 through Illinois Treasury.
To the Illinois Treasury?
You can't just do, it's not just any 529.
It's Bright Directions and Bright Start. Those are the
Okay, so that's something I've never messed with, so if somebody is interested in that, talk to these guys here, they can help you with it. A little bit, well, at least you know where to go, right?
I know where to put all your taxes.
You've seen people do it, right?
I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
several of them, so.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, yeah, Jim?
Just to tag on to that, the one nice thing with 529 plans that was passed about 18 months ago, was that if your kids don't spend it or don't need it all, that can be converted to a Roth IRA. It can also be used for private schools, it can be used for trade schools, so it's further the scope than just college at this point.
Yeah, good. These kind of things, the government's always changing stuff. So what was true today, this year may not be true next year. I didn't know about the Roth thing. That's a great plan. Because that's a question parents have. I stuck away $50,000 for my kid to go to college, and he decided to be a plumber. Okay? Of course, if he was to trade school, it would go to that. But he didn't need that money. So what am I going to do with this extra money? Well, if you can convert it to a Roth, which we'll talk about later, that's a great plan. Okay, let's look at mutual funds. We're not going to talk about Roths, that kind of stuff tonight, but we'll talk about those soon. Mutual funds. What is a mutual fund? A mutual fund goes through stock companies, brokerages, places like Vanguard, Fidelity, places like that. These are big companies, have trillions of dollars in most cases. And they have multiple mutual funds. Mutual funds, there's thousands of them. So that gets complicated right there. There's thousands. I don't know. Vanguard itself might have 300 or 400. I don't know. Massive. So it gets very complicated what to do, and I think people make it too complicated. So any of you that have never done this, I want to try to make it simple and something you can understand. But a mutual fund. Let's say you want to go to this particular mutual fund X, and you've got some money you want to start investing. You don't know what in the world to do. So you start putting money in this mutual fund. The mutual fund is a fund managed by experts, investment experts, who will take your money along with another 500,000 people's money and pool it in one pool and go out and buy stocks that go into their mutual fund. So you can't do that personally. You cannot diversify like they can. So unless you are really, really great at stocks, you would have to go out and buy two or three dozen stocks to diversify like them. So they're going to take your money and buy 500 stocks, and they're going to put it in one big pool, and you make money when their mutual fund goes up in value. So their investments go up, the value of their mutual fund goes up, and your value in their mutual fund goes up. What that does for you is it lets somebody who knows what they're doing invest your money, and you can rest in them. We'll look at who you should rest in a little bit later, but you can rest in them to do what you don't know how to do. So it's really a good plan that we'll try to simplify in a moment. It's a good plan to start putting your money away in these kinds of investments, because you don't have to decide whether or not this stock is going to do well and that stock is going to do well, because they have 500 stocks in their mutual fund. If they have two of them that go belly up, it's going to ding them a little bit, but it's not going to destroy them. If you bought two stocks that went belly up, that went bankrupt, that's going to hurt you quite a little bit. But that's not going to happen at the mutual fund. And so it's much more secure. It may not make the tremendous boom like you want all the time, because it's much more moderated, much more balanced. But over long term, a good mutual fund will do very, very well for you. And you can rest in these mutual funds more than virtually any other investment I can think of. So we'll talk about what that looks like. But that's what the mutual funds are. I know what I think I'm talking about, but you may not know what I'm talking about. So questions on that? Because a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between a money market and a mutual fund? Well, a money market is an investment where you're putting money into for interest. A mutual fund is usually an investment in stocks or bonds. Big difference. One is very, very safe and very low expectations. The other should be fairly safe, but higher expectations. Okay, you cannot keep up with inflation in a money market long term. So you're going to lose purchasing power long term if all your money is in those kinds of instruments. But with a mutual fund, you should be able to stay ahead.
Also, the minimum amount for mutual funds are higher than stocks.
Sometimes. The stock, yeah, you can go out and buy one share of a stock. So that you could do that, and that's didn't cost you much money. Mutual funds, depending on the mutual fund, you can buy into their company for anywhere from 0 to 3,000. So some of them require 3,000. There's a difference on retirement programs too. Usually they'll let you put money in at a lot lower rate in a retirement program to get you started. So you have to look, when you're looking at these, you have to look at the minimum investment. There's mutual funds that you have to have $500,000 to get into. You're probably not going to do that, Tania. But those are, there's people that, I don't know why, but I mean, they're supposed to be better, but I'm not sure they are. But most people, I think probably the average is 1,000 to 3,000. Jim?
You said there's thousands of mutual funds, but isn't it true that only a small percentage of them beat the indexes over the long term?
Yeah, so as we'll look at what kind of mutual funds do, the active managed mutual funds where somebody, as a team of people investing in individual stocks, trying to beat the market and trying to beat everything, over long term, very seldom beat the indexes. Remember I mentioned the 3 indexes? Rarely do they beat the indexes. Once in a while somebody does and they become a superstar, like Warren Buffett or somebody like that. Kathy Woods, for those that follow a little bit, she got real popular for a couple of years ago because she had a real good year, made a lot of money, and everybody said she was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Last I knew, she was losing money every year. So, you know, very few people do well every year, you know. So index funds we'll look at later is the way for most people to go. Yeah. What else? Okay, let's look at this a little bit, see how far we can go. There's several different kinds of mutual funds. So like I said, there's thousands of them. It became very popular back several years ago. There didn't used to be any mutual funds at all. And I think the 1930s or 40s or 50s, they started having them. And there was a handful here and there. Now just thousands of them. So they're very confusing for most people. Here are the basic categories. So kind of going along with what we talked about a moment ago. So if you want an income fund that invests in things like bonds and CDs or treasury notes, things like that, where you're going to get something that will keep up with like the interest-bearing type thing. So this is going to be, usually it's not going to have great returns, but it might do okay. But especially with the income funds, the better ones, I think, are the dividend funds. So Vanguard, for example, has and this, if you want to jot this down, we'll talk about how to do this more next week. But Vanguard Dividend is a mutual fund where you can make money on the capital gain as the fund goes up, but they're investing in companies that have dividends that are pretty substantial. And so that's an income fund. We're getting a lot of their money from dividends. And so they're a little safer, a little less flashy, but they do give you some good money. Growth funds are the funds that are investing in the companies that are bigger. They're hoping they're going to go up in a hurry. The Apples of this world, the technology companies that are doing great right now, Teslas and so forth. You probably heard of the Magnificent Seven. Those are the 7 funds that have been knocking the doors down over the last several years. Apple, I think Amazon's in there.
Probably Netflix, too.
Netflix in there. Facebook is in there, I think. What used to be Facebook.
Whatever Nancy Pelosi's buying.
Could be. Before that, they had the FANG funds. That was the five great funds: Facebook, Amazon. I don't know what the FANG was now. Anyway, Netflix. So anyway, those are the big funds. Growth funds are looking for those kind of people, those kind of funds that are going right up. And so you're likely to make more money sometime in a given year on a growth fund, but the next year those things could go out of favor and they go down a bunch, and then they don't make so much money. Over the long haul, they'll do okay. Total return funds are those that are trying to balance the bonds with stocks. So they're trying to get the best of both worlds. They're getting some money from bonds, some money from stocks, and that they're better balanced, and their total return on the growth funds. So I'm just going to recommend one real quick. So the S&P 500 index fund with Vanguard or any of those kind of companies can do very well for you. S&P 500 index fund. I'll talk more about this next week. We're running out of time. A good total return fund is Wellington with Vanguard. Vanguard Wellington. So they get some bonds, they get some stocks, and over a long period of time, they've done extremely well. They've been a good company. Then there's sector funds. That is, well, what I think this year, oil is going to go up, or I think technology is going to go up, or whatever. So I'm going to invest in a sector. Utilities are going to be good. So I'm going to invest in a sector. So these funds have sectors that you can invest in: oil, you can invest in energy, you can invest in technology, you can invest in whatever, just about any sector you can think of. You can get these sector funds. That takes away a little bit of the security of the fund, because now you're betting on which sector is going to go well this year. And if you've been in mutual funds or stock market at all, you'll know that what everybody loves this week, they may hate next week. So that it can be up and down a lot. But sector funds can be used. One that I personally have is healthcare. So that may or may not play out well, but healthcare is going to be around, right? And international funds. So a lot of people recommend that you have some money in other countries. You can have the emerging markets. That's small countries that are emerging. They could be worth a lot of money. You could have sector funds or international funds in Europe, in Asia, in Japan, or maybe a broader mix. So a lot of people, when you have, let's say it this way, when you have a little bit of money and you're just starting out trying to learn this stuff, I recommend a couple of things. Number one, go ahead and invest your little bit of money because once you invest it, you start looking at it and learning. If you got a little bit of your own investment in there, you start learning. So if you got $500, do it. My first investment was $500 in AT&T. I bought 2 shares or something like that. So maybe it's $50. That's pretty low. So it made me start looking at what's going on. So it got me into it. So don't be afraid of that. And then, what was my other thing? It'll come back to me someday. I see. When you have a little bit of money, get one mutual fund that we'll talk about next week, and start putting some money in there. When your money accumulates to much higher, then you can diversify into other things. But quite frankly, most people will never need over 3 or 4 mutual funds. You don't need an army of them, and you don't need to understand them all. But you might want to diversify between these things. Most of our money should be in here: income and growth, maybe total return, international. If you have funds in those categories, you probably got it covered. Okay? Sector funds, I'm not sure about that. Okay, so we're going to look at exactly how that works and how you can get involved next week. Here very quickly, with the last minute I've got, is reasons to use a mutual fund. And first of all, professional management, good place to get started. Number 2, diversification. If a mutual fund is buying 500 companies, that's really good diversification. They keep records for you. It's very easy today. So they'll send you quarterly returns, and they'll send you your tax records for the end of the year, and they tally it all up for you. Used to be you had to keep your own records, but now they'll tell you exactly how much capital gains you made, how much dividends you had, and so you can do your taxes just perfectly with that. Very easy. Automatic reinvestment of dividends, we recommend that. So you're getting dividends from some of these mutual funds, you automatically reinvest it. They buy more shares for you. A ready market for buying and selling shares, very simple to buy and sell. You can do it right now in front of me. You could open up your phone and sell your shares. You could open up your phone and buy shares if you have something already set up. It just, bam, maybe too quick for sometimes because you can knee jerk. But it's very simple. And then a variety of objectives, and that's because we have different kinds of funds to put it in. So mutual funds is the best investment vehicle out there for the average person. So and most of us are pretty average, right? So we'll look next week a little more at this, how it works, and then try to help you understand how you can do this if you want to. Okay? Okay, we're out of time, so we'll stop there. About 4 more, I think. Something like that. Yep.
No, I want to come out of the shadows. You guys are really into Indian food. Unfortunately not tonight. I have some stuff. Actually, vitamin C, where am I supposed to get zinc from? Are there any natural resources? I have some kale in my hydroponic garden growing. Yeah. What? Isn't it? Yeah. Don't you have a hydroponic garden? That doesn't even make sense.
He knows what's going on. I'm just like, sure, I have my like couple of house plants that I would like to kill.
I have, I was doing herbs, which is great, but I don't cook that much. And my mom doesn't use fresh herbs, so there was really no point in it. So I changed it to lettuce. I've got kale, I have some arugula. The arugula is made as spicy. It's spicy. Yeah. Yeah. I love kale, like dinosaur kale. I love that. Have you ever had this? So good.
Yeah.
But you gotta, like, you gotta
Gotta put the oil and salt and stuff. Yeah, why would you do that?
didn't have fiber.
Winter's just brutal for that kind of thing. I'm really
Is it bad for it to be mild? Why? Oh, what if the plant is still going but it's moldy?
It must be a very hardy root system.
It's like moldy on like depending on like the little things that cause it to put it in.
Yeah, only one of them. In my sealer, when
Fungus never hurt anybody.
but they also need fungi to communicate with us.
What a fun guy.
Can support communication between the soil and the plant. So overworking your garden can ruin the mycelial connection to the ground. And actually when I'm walking.
I mean, I don't till,
Yeah.
like, at all.
Yeah, so you've got probably a great like a system on top of that.
No, we don't, that's the whole point. It's the, not to,
Think about the soil like a muscle, right? You don't want to overwork the muscle where it's like torn and strained, but you want to get it broken down into the right. Just never get me started on gardening.
That's great. What to do?
so, I literally maybe watered this winter, maybe 3 times this winter, and it's still somehow managed to
Oh,
start.
and yeah, because the other one's okay.
Well, like it's
pot. Yeah, it's in a pot.
Definitely got the
So,
Yeah, she had way more, that fell out. I did that and then I was like, this twice.
is it gonna remain in the pot? Probably. Okay, so I would recommend, like, you can literally,
She also doesn't
it is difficult
have
to kill
black
mint.
hair, but I don't know if it's
So
because it's so
you can probably just chop off a piece, plop it into different soil. So, yeah. So on that one,
It's just so thin.
mint is not great for a pot because, but it is good stuff. So it's complicated, right? Because it's good to have it in pots because mint will try to take over whatever. But that needs to be divided and changed like every year, or else it's going to form a ball too much around the pot and then not have
Like, we're thinking about like graduation.
So I would recommend once a year.
Well, and of course, it's the one that I didn't change. So you make sure to experiment. Yeah. You know, I might honestly just take it out and put it in the, so we've got this little like strip of garden that's separated from the sidewalk. And I think it would be good, like, is it in the garden? Like, in the shade, so probably something called the
We have ours in between the garage and the fence. That's where I keep the trash too. So, and then just kind of trash smell and keeps the mice away from the trash.
because they don't like it.
They actually don't like milk because cats like it.